Test, test. Can you try your audio and video too? Can you hear us? Can you test your audio? I don't. Test, test. Can you try your audio too?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Test one, two. Test one, two. Test, test, test.
All right. I think it's working.
Welcome, everyone, to our February 25th, 2025 at 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that we have 4 commissioners that are present. Commissioner Kearns, Jordan, CUNY, and French. Commissioner Waldrop is on county business outside and maybe joining later or not. I'm not sure her schedule today, but I know she's at National Board of Health meetings. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. We start off with Mike Burgess.
Hi, commissioners. You look very formal today.
Yes, we're having technical difficulties in our hearing room, our conference room. So we're here, which is makes it we're all trying to like spread out and
all right, gotcha. I felt like
so.
I should have put a tie on for this. Sorry. Anyway, so we are in the middle of, you'll remember that last week we had our first cutoff, policy committee cutoff. So this week we're doing the fiscal committee cutoff. So those policy bills that cost money have moved to their fiscal committees and are getting their hearings and executive sessions this week. And then starting on Monday, we will transition to being on the floor until Wednesday, the 12th. So we'll spend a week and a half or so on the floor getting Senate bills out of the Senate, House bills out of the House. Then we'll go back into committee for a couple, 3 weeks. And then in the meantime, we're supposed to be seeing a budget in mid-ish March. And that will be, a huge deal. When I say budget, we'll see the House and Senate budgets. But later this week, we're supposed to see the governor's. I don't think, from what I've heard, he's not going to release a full budget, but he's going to release kind of a spending parameters and more importantly, a cuts parameter, because you remember he called upon state agencies, depending on the agency, to cut 6% or 4%, depending on the agency it was. So we're supposed to see some of that stuff later this week. I will just tell you that the budget kind of mood is getting more and more pronounced here. A number of these bills some that we're talking about, but just broadly, a lot of bills that cost money are just dying right now because the budget writers are getting more and more, realistic about things. They've been doing budget meetings all session, but I think it's becoming more and more real. The challenge that they're facing in terms of closing a gap. So just kind of anecdotal stuff there for you. I have a few bills to talk about. One obviously is not new to you, but there is a new version of that bill that's going to be voted from committee today. It might have already happened. And then another one that we have not talked about, 5360, dealing with environmental crimes, and there is some county impact there. So I think I'll just jump to the 9/11 legislation. It's a bill you're familiar with, but there is a substitute bill that is, like I said, will be voted out of committee today. That was one of the links I sent. If you want to open that up, Scott and I talked a little bit about this last night, but this is an attempt to get at the disbursement of the money, the split of the money. And like I said, I do believe that this amendment will hang in committee today, and wanted you to see. I think the easiest thing would just to be, so just to kind of read there what it's changing. Is Scott there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great, Scott. If you can you had some questions about, there were some clarity issues on what this amendment did when we talked last night, but if you can just kind of basically fill in where we're at. And I would just add, commissioners, if there's some concerns here and we want to provide input, we absolutely can. There will be time to suggest corrections or language changes, but this is what the bill looks like as of today when it gets voted from committee.
So, commissioners, this bill essentially, the amendment to it does a couple things. One, it takes out the methodology that was included before based on a call volume. And then, an 80% number that's no longer in here. What's changed is that it includes both PSAPs, so a local jurisdiction operating their own PSAP, as well as a local jurisdiction whose 911 calls are transferred from the regional 911 center. So it's both. Before it was just a secondary PSAP. And then the other change is it calls for a equal sharing of the revenues. That's as much as the definition is. So those are the primary changes as I recall to this one. The amendment, if you go down, Ron, you can see the actual amendment language offered up in this thing.
Equal sharing based on what formula? Don't know.
We don't know.
Very
don't
good.
know.
Thank you.
So go up, Ron. If you see in one, about the fourth line down, must transfer an equal portion of the tax revenue received. And then it's to a local government operating a municipal PSAP or receiving calls transferred from the regional 911 center.
You could read it as equal to everything collected. You could read it as we share it. You can't hear me. I've never heard that before.
So, it does sound then like we would probably want to ask at a minimum for clarity. Your position is still to oppose the bill. I do know that the broader 911 association, even if this formula were to pass and say that, let's just for argument's sake, say you as a board supported it, the 911 association still has problems because they don't want a precedent set in one community to have to be set across all of them. So just know that there's some background information going on that. But again, just wanted to share with you what this said. And if we do want to ask for some clarifying language in the event that the bill does pass, excuse me, in the event that the bill does pass, we do have the opportunity to do that. And so I would just need, the language sent to me and then kind of what the rationale was for why we would want to make the change.
Go ahead, Chris. Just a second.
Mike,
Commissioner Jordan.
can you just clarify where this is at in the process again? And you said something
Sure.
about hanging in committee. Can you translate, please?
Sorry. It is in the House Finance Committee today. So it went from its policy, it was always in House Finance. So it's going to be voted from House Finance, which is the House's tax committee. And when I say hang, this is a substitute bill. This is new language for the bill. So the original bill language will go away and that this is what will replace it. So when I say hang, it would pass the committee today.
And is this the original committee that it was in, or did
Yes,
it already?
yes,
Okay,
it's never,
all right.
It's been tax committee the whole way. And from here, Commissioner, it will go to the Rules Committee, which is a procedural committee where you don't testify or anything like that. It's just it's a procedural committee that they weed out more bills, and then ultimately it would go to the House floor. And it would have to be voted off the House floor by that March 12th date.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mike, can I ask who's the sponsor of this striker?
It's Chair Berg. She's the chair of the committee.
Oh,
I've had a few conversations with her and others on the committee. She had said she was going to look at the words were used were the formula, this tax dispersion, and offer something else different than the original bill. And that's what's reflected here. And I think some of this is probably based on conversations she's been having with other Spokane delegation members that I was not privy to. My guess is one would have been the prime sponsor, and then others that are from the region that are interested in this bill.
Sure. The primary concern still exists in here. If the city or someone else is going to operate their own PSAP, it would make natural sense to transfer the full amount of the revenues to them because they would need them to operate. This one still does not have the cost, the recognition of costs into it. So the work that's being done, if we were to find a harmonizing way to move forward with the city part of the regional system, there's no acknowledgement of costs that are being performed or responsibility performed by SHREC, the Regional 911 Center. So that still is a concern that exists in this bill too.
So commissioners, I brought it to you just to update you. I mean, clearly you can revisit your position on it. My gut instinct tells me this does not change your position on it. But wanted to offer that up to you. If you have any comments there, otherwise we can move on to the next one from my perspective anyway.
So Mike, I would just add that, would you talk to Representative Volz as well on this, because he was in the meetings leading, trying to help before, and he might have some thoughts as to, if it comes to the floor, things he might add.
Yes, for sure, Commissioner. I've been talking with him and other members of the delegation about it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions on that one, or can we move to the next one that's a new item for you?
And just a second, I just want to recognize that we've been joined by Commissioner Waldrop. So for the record.
Okay. The next one, I'm going to lean on Kyle here a bit, but just some background. There is a bill here dealing with environmental crimes. It does a number of things. I think it changes the enforcement statute, but it increases penalties on folks that commit environmental crimes. But it is impactful for the county in as much as with your wastewater treatment plant. And I will let Kyle get into that more, but know that this is a kind of a big, broad bill. But there was some language that was passed in committee to explicitly say that cities and counties are liable for these when there are incidents, if they're in an offending situation. I thought that was already in statute, but then it was reclarified. So I'll let Kyle kind of give you some background on why it's concerning. And I've been asked by other colleagues in the local government realm what we thought of this. And so I wanted to make you aware of it and see if you had some thoughts on it. So please, Kyle.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, commissioners. We've been following this one a little bit since it was drafted, and certainly have some concerns because it changes the penalties in two ways for violation of discharge. It adds in civil penalties, Class C felonies or gross misdemeanors, and it also brings liability down to the individual, which is particularly concerning when you talk about operating a municipal or county-owned wastewater treatment facility. Wastewater treatment plants violate their discharge limits in their MPDES permits, and that would trigger this bill. And there's language in here about knowingly and negligent or knowingly violating. And the irony of that is, if any wastewater operator is paying attention, they're going to know the violation is going to occur before it happens, but we can't just stop the flow coming into the plant. It's going to happen. It's going to discharge. So it really seems like an unnecessary increase for the penalty. A Class C felony or a gross misdemeanor is a pretty steep penalty for a permit violation. Nothing that's going to endanger anyone. And taking it down to the individual is especially concerning. If they're doing their job, they're going to know it's going to happen because we're doing regular testing. We know what's going on. This could be anything as simple as like being outside your pH limits of your discharge. Anything with the chemistry like nitrogen that's off or CBOD, which we know in advance because we're testing it very regularly. Our MPDES permits are written with limits that are intended to kind of be violated on occasion. They're written with like super tight 99 to 95% confidence limits depending on the thing, but they're not 100%. They're kind of meant to be violated because they want you focused on a very narrow set of parameters for your discharge. We always report these to Ecology. They acknowledge them, they review them, and they have the ability to assess civil penalties at $10,000 per event per day. Another kind of concern I have with this is just scaring off wastewater operators out of our state, which I would imagine would be a bigger environmental concern than anything these penalties could hope to address. there's a big shortage of qualified wastewater operators, and these treatment plants are more and more complex. We really need to be feeding that pipeline of qualified individuals, not threatening them with criminal penalties down to the individual level. They talk about tier 1 causing harm, which I think would be difficult to define, but the tier 2 is very easily applicable to any number of really innocuous violations.
Thanks, Kyle. So there's probably a lot to digest, commissioners. We have not talked about this bill. It has moved to the Senate Rules Committee and been told that the prime sponsor is very intent on getting this moving. My thought was, if you don't do this right now, but relatively soon, that if you share this concern, you would like me to share some of the concerns that Kyle has specific to the impact on the county. I would like to do that on your behalf, but I just wanted to throw it to you for some discussion if you want to talk about it today, or we can readdress it next week. But we'd be getting timeline wise, we'd probably need to figure out this week that we want to comment on it.
I'll ask you and Commissioner French, what is WASAC? Have they talked about this, or the affiliate group?
So Commissioner French, if you wanted to answer, I know the WASAC colleagues, one of my WASAC colleagues asked me specifically about this because they're concerned.
We've had conversations about this, but I think, as I remember, and we weighed in with concerns because this obviously has a pretty detrimental impact on a lot of operations throughout the state. But unless you remember something other than that, Mike, that's my memory.
Right, I agree with you, but I haven't been at all the ledge steering committee meetings this year, but I believe that to be the case.
Okay, Commissioner excuse me, Commissioner Waldron.
Thanks, Mike. I haven't read the bill language, but basically, as what you're saying, that the individual, and what Kyle was talking about, is that the person, the actual employee of a company or a municipality or would be personally liable. Is that what you're saying?
I believe, yes.
Criminally.
Yeah. And I think that Kyle mentioned, and I've heard other attorney types here talk about, the issue is that term knowingly. And like Kyle mentioned, because of the data you receive on your, I don't know what the chemistry of your wastewater, your staff knows, like Kyle said, that they are in fact in violation of your permit, but I can't get into the ins and outs of all that. But so in some ways it almost feels like the bill, because of the way the law is drafted, or the way the bill is drafted, and this is my term, it's almost like you're building a case against yourself because you're complying with your permit regulations and going back to that knowingly standard. Does that make sense, Kyle? The way
Yeah, it specifically says you knowingly violate, standards like Clean Water Act, which is what our MPDES permit is tied to. So yeah, it would take that down to the individual, your operator. So very concerning from our perspective.
So does this change
Commissioner
Waldron,
Waldron, it makes them that it's not personally liable, they're criminally liable. I mean, it will be a criminal record.
Yeah.
So, but does this change the permit or the standards that Ecology, we have a permit, and what you're saying is, I thought there was, you could have a small amount of, in your permit, as you're saying, Kyle, you could have like once a year type of quote unquote violation, and that's allowed for in your permit. Does this change that?
Yeah, well, there's, our permit has a myriad of, allowed numerical limits in our effluent, pH has to be, I'm waxing here, but like 7.4 to 7.8. And something could easily happen where, you hit 7.9 and, you need to tweak your chlorination and you report that to ecology. There's not like you're allowed once per year. It's they're watching everything and you have to report on everything. There was an incident last year at the Liberty Lake Water and Sewer Plant where their chemistry got a little out of whack and they were in violation of their nitrogen limits for like 2 weeks. I don't know the exact timeline, but something along those lines. These things happen because the permit's written super narrow, and ecology typically doesn't assess the civil penalties because it's not a dramatic impact to water quality, and they're monitoring it. I mean, to the extent they're almost like, well, thanks, we wanted to know, your BOD was off for 6 hours today. That doesn't mean we were, harming the river in any particular manner. I don't know how you would even assess that, but our limits are written very narrow. And so ecology is constantly watching them. They tweak them every time we get a new permit, but this bill wouldn't change our permit. It would just make us personally, criminally liable every time we have an exceedance.
Okay, that helps me understand. It sounds like there must be an example of something that went awry, and that's why the legislature is trying to take a heavy hand. But I doubt it had something to do with municipal sewer overflows. It probably had something to do with a commercial situation, but I don't know. So just wondering where this was coming from.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think you're absolutely right. I think that there is, for lack of a better way to say it, I think the bill would probably just be more trying to target corporate, private interests as opposed to public interests. But you are caught up in it in as much as you have the wastewater plant. So,
well, I mean, personally, I think it's important that there aren't violations of the Clean Water Act and the permits, but to make public employees criminally liable seems that seems very problematic. And I would think that WASAC and the public employee unions would want to have a say in this and be concerned.
Yeah, and Commissioner, there's no distinction, between the scale of the violation, whether it's a corporate discharge or just wantingly discharging into a small fish-bearing creek versus, a large treatment plant, on the Puget Sound dumping raw sewage into the ocean versus our pH being off by, 1/10 of a point. I mean, there's no distinction between any of those events.
Okay, just a second. Commissioner French wants to comment.
So a couple different things. Mike, have you had any conversations with representatives from either Kaiser or the Spokesman Review, because they're also dischargers to the river? And just wondering where they're at, because they are those private operations that have permits to discharge in the river.
When you say spokesman, Commissioner, I assume you mean IEP then?
Yeah.
I've had a passing conversation, nothing, just more of a, hey, are you aware of this bill? Yeah, I'm aware too, and I need to talk to my commissioners about it. But I think they would have the concerns for sure.
Well, and then the other question, and I guess this is probably more of a comment, the city of Spokane has had a historical challenge of discharging into the river for their combined stormwater sewer system overflow. And even with their basins, they're still experiencing discharges into the river and stuff. And since we are partners with them in the Riverside facility, if they have difficulty finding an operator, that will affect the entire county because they handle some of our waste and stuff. So this is very concerning from my standpoint, And based upon what I know so far this morning, I'd be very much opposed to this bill.
Okay. Commissioners, maybe would suggest that a way to communicate with the delegation would be, it's kind of centers around, when I heard Kyle speak, there's a couple things, like there's, the interaction with your permit and knowingly, I think there's an artful way to come up with kind of language to describe how, interaction with your permit and, spills, or I don't know what the right term is. And then also the employee part, right? It sounds like there's kind of two concerns I heard from Kyle the most. Could I work with him to come up with, a couple paragraphs about this that I could then use to message with with your Spokane delegation members here in the Senate, anticipating that maybe the bill does make it over to the House as well?
Head nods for Kyle to move forward. I'm seeing head nods from everybody.
Yes, I think that'd be a good idea. But I think Kyle's point about, a small versus large violation, there's no distinction at all. So
yeah,
it's
and I think there'd
concerning.
be some good points. So sorry, Kyle, to make work for you, but maybe we can come up with some of that in the next 24, 48 hours. And then from a process standpoint, commissioners, do you want to review that before I send it in, or how do you want to handle that?
Just a question. Mike, do we know if the city has a thought on this or has looked at this as well, given that it would affect them?
I'm sure they've looked at it, Commissioner. I haven't tracked down my colleagues with the city, and I have to talk to them about something else today. And so I'll hopefully run them down and find out where they're at with it.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Commissioner French that checking in with others who could be impacted would be good. Obviously, Wasac, I would think, would have an input. In just skimming the bill report, it does look like they've tried to frame it in a way that this would only apply to really, really, really bad situations where you knew you shouldn't have done that and your behavior violated the regular standard of care and you knew it was going to imminently harm. So I think that might be some of the response that comes back from Olympia is, oh, no. This is only applying to the really bad, worst of the worst. But I still think that we need at least concern about the potential impact on employees and operators and disrupting the regular enforcement of permit issues. So I think at least concern would be my feeling.
Yeah. Okay. So then how about I work with Kyle, and then I will try to run down my colleagues today and find out where the city's at and verify with IEP, and then Kaiser too. And then I'll text you commissioners with that information. How about that? Okay.
I think sounds good. Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you. And now I've got the bill list, commissioners. I've taken a lot of your time today, so I'll run through this quick. This is not, these aren't new to you, but just want to give you updates on them. The freight rail infrastructure bill, that bill is likely dead for session. It's still in the appropriations committee. It could be added, but you'll remember what I said about budgets and anything that's costing money. That's problematic. And I think that's probably one of the issues with the bill. Local government planning. This is the bill that Scott Chesney talked with you about. It's 1135, and then it's not a companion, but it's similar to 5197 that's later on the list. Both those bills have moved to the Rules Committee, but there are discussions ongoing with some of our county friends and their legislators that serve on the local government committee and that work these GMA issues in particular closer, and in Snohomish in particular. So they're trying to come up with some accommodation and work on this language and work on the bill as it moves forward. The competency evaluation bill, it does have a hearing today based on your position that we took 5 weeks ago, signed us in opposed to that. We've already talked about the 911 bill. The hiring grants bill, the Senate version is the one that's going to move. That's 5060, if in fact it does move, but it will also be caught up in the budget issue because of the cost. And there also have already been some alternative proposals that have come forward in terms of law enforcement funding from some more progressive members in the House.
Mike,
Mike,
Yes.
just a second. Commissioner Jordan's got a comment.
just, do you have any insight in terms of, as the budget writers get more realistic, where this might fall or where it's moving, given that it seems to be a top priority for the governor?
I think you just answered that, Commissioner, because it is such a priority for the governor. He's made that very clear that he wants this. And I think, if I recall right, I think his his inaugural said, and I shouldn't say that because I know he said he wouldn't sign a budget in a few areas. So I shouldn't say that. But I know it's a priority for him. And then we'll probably see, I wonder if this doesn't get referenced, later this week when he does his budget framework, or I have to imagine the press would ask him a question about that. But it is $100 million price tag, is the original. And I know that that's a big number. I mentioned that some other alternative proposals that I've heard about. One has been introduced, and those alternative proposals would also give you grants to hire, but there's also more of a focus, maybe not more of a focus, but there's additional language in the bill, as I understand it, that would broaden what the eligibility was. In the Holy Bill, it was pretty much for hiring uniforms, whereas these other proposals get into the human services side of law enforcement. Are you hiring drug counselors or any number of other things that impact why people commit crimes? So in a way, those other bills maybe look at it more holistically as opposed to just a straight hiring of uniforms. But having said that, those are all going to be part of the budget as that comes together in the middle of March. And so, Commissioner Jordan, that's kind of an answer, non-answer, but probably a little bit too early to tell, I guess.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And then House Bill 1700, that's the 6-month delay and the comp plan update. That bill's moved to rules, as has its Senate counterpart. That's later on the list. 1786 this was the TIF bill. Unfortunately, was unable to get a hearing on that. I think that we have some work to do in the interim if we want to carry forward with it. For whatever reason, with certain legislators, there can actually be a pretty visceral reaction to TIF. I don't really understand why. And then, though you had Commissioner French, I know you had spoken with the fire districts, fire commissioners, you'd done a lot of public safety work. There are still other parts of public safety that are concerned about this. And then in addition, for whatever reason, there are a number of ports that use TIF, but there are a number that don't like TIF. And so there's just folks all over the map on this, and enough members of the House Finance Committee that didn't want to take something like this up this year. The next bill, 1813, that's the bill that Justin briefed us on a couple weeks ago. It has appropriations hearing today, signed us in favor of that. And then the Law Enforcement Aviation Grant Program, also a hearing today, signed in support there. We touched on the law enforcement personnel bill, but the Senate one has executive session scheduled for tomorrow. And then getting to the tail end here, the county auditor's bill, that bill died. 5197 I already spoke to you about. That's tied up with those discussions with the folks that work the GMA issues for local government. The Public Defense Services bill did not pass the policy committee. And then 5558 is the Senate version of the GMA timelines. And then the last one, or the last two there, Senator Christian's bill dealing with the Newman Lake issue did not make it out of committee. And then the municipal solid waste bill, Commissioner Jordan, that you testified on, has its hearing tomorrow in Ways and Means. There are some folks from the city signed in to testify. If you wanted to do that, you certainly could. I don't know that it's necessary in the fiscal committee, given that there are folks testifying, and that hearing is going to be probably 4 hours long, and it will be difficult to predict time certain. So, but can talk to you offline if you did want to express, or someone else wanted to express interest. But I did sign us in favor of the bill.
No, I'm glad you signed us in favor. Okay, so 1813, that's the one that I testified on. Is there?
Yes.
So you said that's out of committee?
It was out of the policy committee, but then it has its hearing in the budget committee today. The bill's doing what it's supposed to do. it's moving
Okay.
along the right path.
Okay, perfect, great.
Yep.
Otherwise, I would say let me know if I need to do anything else on that.
I will do that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mike? Okay, busy time
right.
for you and all of us. So thank you very much. And
Of course,
we'll
no.
see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for letting us run a little long today. Thank you.
Okay, bye. So that's, sorry, I've got a little throat issue today. So next that's going to take us to Todd Woodward.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm joined today by Brian Wurst, our General Counsel.
Just a second. Commissioner Waldorf, I see you raise your hand.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry, I would love to hear what Todd has to say, but I do have to jump off to go to my next training session here with the other public health board members. So I'll be heading off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Don't take it personally.
I won't. So today I'm here regarding a joint resolution with the city of Spokane approving the sale of 14.24 acres and an option to purchase nearly 18 acres of property to AT Acquisitions. I'm joined today by Brian Wurst, our general counsel, not so much in a legal capacity, but just in continuity. Typically, the CEO and the general counsel negotiate these deals. So if there were some intricate questions you had, I wanted to have somebody, the subject matter expert with me. Historically, this triangle represents the 3 parcels we previously sold to AT Acquisitions. Starting on the left is AT1. On the far right is AT2, and then you can see the pad. It's actually constructed now of AT3. And then where that pad is to the left of it is the subject property of the 32 acres. The site is located about, as the crow flies, about a mile west of the terminal complex, off of just west of the intersection of Hayford and McFarlane Road and south of McFarlane. If you looked at the water tower on the far left, that road would be Russell Road as it extends north and south, if you're familiar with the West Plains as it runs. Next slide, please. Thank you, Ron. I wasn't sure who was advancing those, so thank you. Just a quick reminder, this was the first sale in 2020 to AT. This was, they constructed 187,000 square foot distribution warehouse facility on 29 acres. It is currently occupied by Amazon as their electric charging vehicle storage and training facility. Go to the next slide. AT2 is another 200,000 square foot facility that was sold in 2021. It has mixed use clients at this time. Next slide. AT3, which you can see is up, is also another 202,000 square foot concrete tilt-up facility on 13.8 acres. And this is the site. Everything in the red outline is the 32.2 acres of land, again, generally south of West McFarlane Road. The sale of the 14.24 acres is a surplus property. It's surplus to our aeronautical needs. So you're required to dispose of surplus property because you can't use aviation aeronautical related funding to maintain non-aeronautical land. So this was our sale price is $2.55, which is above the fair market value price of $2.50. Then the option to purchase the 17.96 is at $2.50, which is at fair market value. It's discounted a little bit because the city's sewer and water lines bisect the property, so it decreases the value of what you can develop on it. And this would also authorize the airport interim CEO to execute all required documents.
Mr. Woodard, before you move further, could you go back 2 slides?
Sure.
The aerial, that right there, that dark area there bisecting the lot, isn't that where the easement is?
Yeah,
So
excellent.
that it effectively divides the lot in
Excellent.
half,
Yes.
which impacts its viability in terms of construction and stuff because you've limited, you can't build over the top of the easement.
Right. And then the city maintains access to be able
Yep.
to maintain their sewer and water lines too. Excellent point. Thank you. I should have thought to do that. So again, the proposed sale of 14.24 acres and the right of first refusal option on the 17.96. And then the last slide is just an artist's conception of what they plan to construct there. I'll just recognize this is in a certified or what they call a qualified opportunity zone, which allows investors to maintain their capital gains in the project. If they maintain their capital gains for 10 years, and they'll realize the upside of that. And the intention of the opportunity zone is to encourage development in impoverished areas. And the zip code, the census tract, excuse me, for Airway Heights is designated in that area. So it's actually utilizing what the opportunity zone legislation federally had intended for it to happen in terms of creating work sites. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So this resolution is for next week's agenda? Okay, perfect. Oh, Commissioner French.
Yeah, just wanted to provide a little bit more context in terms of, you know, the developer here has got 2 buildings that are being used by Amazon. There are 2 other buildings that are being constructed by Amazon, and then we've got Prime Air. So in the West Plains, we have 5 facilities and probably well over 4,000 employees that are part of that Amazon structure and stuff. So and then in this proposal, this will be a large facility to handle some of the other businesses that are associated with not only the Amazon, but also some of the other manufacturers that are on the West Plains and stuff. So multiple uses available and needed square footage for warehouse and manufacturing facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have Kevin Ritchie, who is not. Yes.
I
That's where it's-
I guarantee that's where he went.
Okay, so what do we have after Kevin that we could? I know, would Deborah Frickens be willing to jump down? And she's not here. I don't know if we could. Okay.
Al, can I ask when?
Commissioners, would you like me to quickly go through Deb's items? Yeah, I'll do my best to cover for our expert in this matter. This is regarding to our training in the EVOC course out on the West Plains with the small arms range. These are avigation easements that would be granted.
And Deborah's just walking in.
Okay, well, I will not steal her thunder and allow her to more properly describe this matter.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, board.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us early.
Yes. This is our aviation easements that we're granting. It is part of being able to build. You have to supply both the Fairchild Air Force Base and also the Spokane International Airport aviation easements. And since we built the training center and since we've also built the emergency vehicle tract, we are required to grant those aviation easements.
Okay, any questions? No? Thank you. That's the first one.
And the second one that I have before you is acquiring some right of way from our Colbert transfer station. Could you go to the next slide, please? And as you can see, there's just that little narrow spot for Elk Chatteroy Road and Big Meadows. We need that for our road project, County Road Project 3323. And we had, the next slide, please. We had our right-of-way department went through and they came up with a value for that piece of property. And so the money would go to the Colbert Transfer Station, our solid waste department. Any questions?
Any questions for Deborah? Oh, Commissioner Kearns? No.
So I just find it, so it's the $1,100 was the
Yeah.
cost? Okay,
Just I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I think it's,
it might be.
I think if we have too many mics on it, it does that. So, okay, so who are we purchasing the property from?
We're purchasing it from our solid waste.
Okay, so the roads
Department
department is
is-
purchasing from solid waste.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
great.
road department's.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, that's gonna then take us back to Kevin Ritchie, Under Sheriff.
Step up there.
Yeah, I think the
Okay.
video can see you, so.
Excellent. So good morning. Sorry I had it for 10, so I apologize for being late. The first thing I have for you is the annual laptop purchase. And this is our mobile data computers that we purchase every year for new patrol, replace some old ones, and also with our success in hiring, we're kind of running short on new computers. So that's our $198,241.56 from the IT's budget. Any questions there?
Is it, does it come out of IT's budget or the sheriff's office
Well,
IT budget?
the sheriff's office, yeah, I guess I should say the sheriff's office IT
Okay.
budget. So the IT bills us and we pay it out of our budget.
And do you have like a particular, I assume this is all budgeted for already?
Oh,
in this
absolutely.
year?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
all
budgeted
right.
for, yes.
Do you go through, is it usually same vendor, same process every time?
Yeah, recently over the last few years, the vendors all been the same. I mean, it has changed in the past, but I think we've been using the same vendor. Man, it's probably been 5+ years now, or even longer than that.
Okay.
That's a guess. It is the same vendor though.
And it looks like it's 40 laptops?
Yes.
Is what it is? Okay.
And that's just to keep up with demand for replacements of broken or used ones. And also, like I said, we are getting close to having all of our positions full. And so we need laptops to issue new people as well.
Okay. That's
Kevin's team works pretty closely with IT. So IT leads the procurement effort of these. So they're procuring these as we would other laptops. Are just different for the sheriff's office because I think they're ruggedized versions,
Yes.
right? Yeah. But similar procurement processes.
Commissioner Kearns?
$5,000 is roughly the cost per
They're
laptop?
Yes, about 5,000 a piece. Yeah.
But are we doing that, Scott? Are we dropping them from 3-story buildings?
I hope not.
No, but I can give some anecdotal, I've, in my patrol days, I broke at least 2 of them. Just stuff happens to them. You hit them with gun barrels getting back in the car, you drop them when you're walking, into other other offices and things like that. They get beat around pretty good.
but if they break, wouldn't we rather break an $800 one than a $5,000 one?
The problem is if we bought $800 ones, we'd break them a lot more often than and also that they're also, I believe they're set up to where they can bounce around in cars without having internal issues as well. And like a regular laptop, if you mounted it to a vehicle and you're bouncing around in cars and stuff like that, they can have some problems as well.
Okay.
So
All right.
these are the same ones that are made for the military, essentially.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
And that takes us to our next, which is the axonevidence.com license purchase. So this is, I don't know if this necessarily needed to be brief because this is just an addition to our 10-year contract, but I want to, since the board was so, allowed us to enter into this long-term agreement, anytime there's changes, I want to make sure that we bring them forward. This is a $136,631 change, and it's for 20 new licenses. And again, with our success of hiring, we found that the amount of licenses we've had in the past or utilized is not going to be enough because we need to issue new licenses. The new people we hire, we need to have licenses available for people who access evidence, who aren't commissioned. And so we found ourselves jockeying licenses around and kind of like deleting some people's licenses to give to someone else and then reissuing this license to this person. So we needed a little bit more of a buffer because we basically ran out. But this is it. The $136,631 is amortized over 116 months. So this is for the life of the contract. This isn't just for a one-time purchase or anything like that. So it comes out to about $1,100 a month as an expense, as an increase to the existing contract. Any questions about that? And we don't anticipate having to add any more licenses in the near future, but like I always say, stuff happens. So we'll see. Well, hopefully this will be enough, depending on staffing issue and that kind of stuff. All right.
Just a question.
Yes.
So it's it's over a long term.
It's over 116 months.
I assume that we've got to approve the amendment or the change, but is it within the sheriff's budget to cover it?
This is something we could absorb in our budget, this change right here. We're not asking for any additional money to pay for this.
Okay. Thank you.
And then of course, the next year is when we submit our budget, it will include this in it.
And success for hiring is a good thing. So.
Absolutely. Well, I like to think so. Yeah. With success comes a little bit more expenditures as well. So. The next item is the WASPIC Traffic Safety Award, and this is an $11,500 award for radars. We're going to purchase 5 radars. The award is shared between the county and the valley, and it's because of our high visibility enforcement participation that we were awarded this through WASPIC. And the funding is passed down through the Washington State Traffic Safety Commission. Sure. Radars? I believe these are vehicle mounted radars. Yeah. And it may not even specify which ones they are in the grant. It's just purchasing of radars for high visibility enforcement. But I believe that's the intent.
But it's not the trailer units.
No, absolutely. It's for vehicles or for individual deputies.
Okay.
And we've got the funds from the state. This is just the agreement with the valley to implement it. Good.
Yes. I believe so, yes. All right. And then the next one is the Washington State Patrol Interagency Agreement. We are implementing the commercial vehicle safety program it's for monitoring commercial vehicles on county roads, weights and measures, that kind of thing. And so our traffic sergeant has attend some training for implementation of this, but this includes integration of the FMCSA safe spec software from the state, which is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration software. So this is just an interagency agreement between us and WSP for implementation of this program. And we have one deputy who is currently attending training for weights and measures.
What does the implementation look like? What does that actually mean for the deputy?
Well, so we've had commercial vehicle inspectors in the past, and it's a vehicle that's equipped to carry all that equipment around. You've probably seen or may have noticed the state patrol out on the freeways has vehicles, and sometimes they're marked as weights and measures or commercial vehicle, and they can actually do stops of large like semis or large vehicles, and they have portable scales, and they have all the software and stuff to be able to make sure that they're following all of the codes and the guidelines for safety on the road, so they can weigh them and all that stuff. And the fines are pretty hefty. They're, in the tens of $30,000 range, fines for violations. So we used to have 2 commercial vehicle inspectors out on the road, and those programs have kind of lapsed, and the deputies are no longer doing that. And so they wanted to restart that just so we had some way to monitor that on county roads, because the state does it on the freeways.
Kyle, I see you raised your hand.
Thank you, commissioners. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate from the Public Works perspective, when this program was in effect a few years back, it was really helpful in protection of our county roads. And it's just really good to see this opportunity come back forward. Having that mobile unit is really effective. They don't have a lot of good options when they don't have the mobile capabilities, such other than wasting a sheriff's time following a commercial vehicle to a different scale center. When they can do it right there on the road, it's really effective, and we see compliance rapidly because of those fines.
Just curious, what triggers an inspection typically? What would cause someone to get on the radar, so to speak, for weights and measures inspection?
I don't know. I know those people are trained to see issues, and it has to do with the weight and the compression of the shocks and all that kind of stuff. I'm not really sure. I've never actually done it before, or actually even looked into that, to be honest with you. But and I think if I'm correct, I think they can be randomly stopped and inspected as well. There doesn't have to be any probable cause for a stop if they're traveling on a public roadway.
Thank you.
What's that? Oh, yep, that's the last one I have here. So last one I have is the vehicle use agreement for the city of Spokane Valley. And this is a 2014 Ford Explorer that we've used as a police vehicle. It's been, obviously all paid off and everything. And the Valley has paid their depreciated value 100%. This vehicle will be loaned to them for a year. This is the agreement for that. And they have to maintain the insurance and maintenance and all the upkeep of the vehicle for the year. But the depreciation has been paid out fully. And so this is just sort of a loan of one of our vehicles to them for them to use for city purposes.
Any questions on that? Okay.
And that's all I have.
Thank you for all your updates. Appreciate
Thank you.
Hopefully, seeing your bandage on your finger, you were
Broke my pinky.
Oh no.
I don't even know why you need pinky.
Thank you. Okay, well, I see Dr. Zing is on, so we could just go. So since we're running ahead, Dr. Zing, if you're ready to go, we'll go ahead and have you do your briefing.
Okay, thanks. I'm always prepared now because I know sometimes you guys do inexplicably run ahead. So here I am. Mine, I hope, won't be too convoluted. So we have an opportunity to enter into a clinical training agreement with a medical school in Billings, Montana. And this came about because a student there is interested in becoming a forensic pathologist, but they don't have anything set up currently.
Dr. Zing, we can barely hear you, so I wonder if maybe just move closer to the mic.
Can you hear me better?
Sorry. No, maybe it should. Yeah, just make sure your volume's up.
Is that any better?
A little bit better, not much.
I'm changing, I have 3 microphones that I can choose from. How about this one? Is this any better?
That's much better.
That's better. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So we have an opportunity to enter into a clinical training agreement with a medical school in Billings, Montana. And this came about because there is a student there, a 3rd-year medical student who is interested in becoming a forensic pathologist. And they don't have any agreements currently for that school for clinical rotations in our field. So she reached out to see if it would be possible to arrange a month-long rotation in our office. And we have interlocal agreements already set up with our local medical schools. So we were able to use that as a template for an agreement with this Rocky Vista. It's a school of osteopathic medicine, which is essentially the same curriculum as our medical schools here. So just here to let you know that this is a possibility, and see if you had any questions about how that might look as far as the logistics of the agreement or anything. Our attorney Wesley is also on if there's any questions about legal issues or risk management.
Any questions? I guess question I would have is in an agreement, if that person is wanting to come over here, those costs are on them, or are they, how is that structured?
Yes, correct. So actually the school will pay us a stipend to train their student. So that it helps a little bit from our standpoint to offset the costs of, for example, the protective equipment that we'll be giving them to wear in autopsy. But all the other expenses, including housing, their travel, all of that is borne by the student and or the school.
Okay. And I know you're busy, so I'm just going to make sure you have time.
Yes, yeah, we do. Yeah, we're accustomed to training. You know, it's my dream to grow like a homegrown pool of people so we can bring them all into the pipeline. And this is a nice way to expand that, not just to our local schools, but to regional schools, because they too, I think, are more likely to want to stay or come back to the area. So yeah, we'll fill them in between our own students. So our students, local students, of course, will get priority, but this we do have some slots open this spring, which is when they're projected to come in March or April. So we'll be able to slot her right into one of our.
That's great. Now I'm excited. So Commissioner Jordan.
Just say whatever we can do to support the pipeline is great.
Yeah.
And then can you remind me in terms of the agreements that we have with the local medical schools, what the flow of rotating students looks like on a regular basis?
What the load looks like. So it really depends. We have a number of them that come for just 1 or 2 days early in their training. So 1st or 2nd year medical students. So that's just basically an observership. They come and they see some autopsies. If there's a suitable scene, we send them out to the scene with an investigator and we kind of debrief with them. And that's to give them exposure, because a lot of times in a lot of places, students don't get exposure to the field early. And then the longer rotations occur later in their training, so 3rd and 4th years, and those students tend to come for 2 weeks or 4 weeks at a time. And then it's a little more in-depth exposure to autopsy techniques, seeing how the physicians sign out cases, going to scenes also. So to give them, those are typically people who might be more interested in the field. So to really kind of give them that directed exposure to what it looks like day to day, and hopefully, keep their interest high.
And is that rotation, the longer one, is that usually one student at a time? Is it multiple? Is it kind of constant, or comes and goes just depending on interest and schedules at the medical schools?
Right. So it's typically one student at a time. We don't really have, it would be too much, I think, for us to try to manage 2 students at a time. And it really does depend on the students, their other electives that they're doing, and then whatever we have going on in the office. So sometimes we might be onboarding, for example, new faculty or new staff, and have a college intern. And at that time, we don't have really the wherewithal to support having yet another person around. So we try to kind of manage all the pieces so that we can give everybody the attention that that I think is best, to give them a good experience.
One more follow-up is, can you remind me, because it's been a little bit since I visited, are there any relationships with residency programs right now, or is there just not a lot of overlap between your office and the curriculums that exist in those local programs?
So there's no pathology program, no pathology residency program here in Spokane. And so unfortunately, we don't have that piece of the pipeline. We do, I work with the internal medicine residents, mainly for a one-off kind of seminar on death certification, and also to expose them to what happens to people who die in the community. What does our office do? How does their work interface with ours? That type of thing. So in terms of residency interaction, that's really all we have available to us at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. I think it's great. I think it, is, it again just shows how you're looked to as a regional facility that's just, doing us proud here in Spokane County. So thank you for all that you're doing.
That we have people reaching out from far away. They're like, "Oh, I read about your office," or "I heard about your office," and it's like, "Oh, that's so great." I really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No, thank you. Okay, next that's going to take us to Doug and Jonathan Smith.
Yes. Oh, great. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
We have a brief presentation for you where we're working with Inland Power on a utility easement request, and believe we have a good win-win scenario. So I think Jonathan has a 4-slide presentation he'll go through, and he's been lead on this with Inland. So with that, I'll stand aside.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning. So like Doug mentioned, we have a easement request from Inland Power and Light for an easement to put underground utilities through the Willow Lake Park. To give you a little context, Willow Lake Park is located on the north side of I-90 off the Four Lakes exit. If you don't already know, the park is about 140 acres and it was purchased back in the early 2000s, 2002, I think. Also, for background, the tree cover for the property was heavily damaged in the 2023 Gray Fire. So that is also an aspect of this park you might want to consider. So the reason for their request, Inland Power has a distribution line that goes on the south side of West Silver Lake Road. It's supported by 3 wood power poles. Over the years, the water has risen in Granite Lake, and so the power poles are now situated so they're in the lake and they need to be removed. Inland Power would like to come through and remove those power poles, but that disconnects the customers on the west side of the lake. And so what they are proposing to do is to take those 3 power poles out and then route power from the north side of the lake down to reconnect customers on the west side of the lake to the power source. That's where this easement comes into place. And you can switch to the next slide. The easement goes through kind of a thin part of the lake or of the park there, and it will be all underground power line utilities. The easement that's requested is about 500 feet long and about 10 feet wide. In consideration for this easement, and you can go ahead and go to the next slide. In consideration of this easement, actually go ahead and switch one more. Sorry. Yes, thank you. In consideration for this easement, Inland Power has agreed to bring power along the north side of Silver Lake Road to the southwest corner of the Willow Lake Park property and provide us with a power drop for any future development we might pursue in the future. So with that, I was wondering if you might have any questions.
Commissioner Jordan? No. Okay. No. I think that seems like a reasonable request. So I think it looks great.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I have now checked off all the things on our regular agendas, and we'll go to miscellaneous. Scott.
I do have something. I wanted to check with the commissioners on, I think a couple of you are traveling coming up here. We've got, if you've been paying close attention to our inmate population in our detention facilities, they've rapidly grown back up and have been hovering around the 900 level over the last probably 2 weeks or so. It's much quicker in the year than we typically see our populations increase. It's typically in the May-June timeframe. That is also in recognition, or it also reflects the fact that the county had moved or we reduced our U.S. Marshals population by about 50 about 6 months ago, as we were continuing to see capacity challenges in the jail. So there's a number of things that we'd like to talk to the board about. I was thinking about an upcoming strategic meeting that considered our municipal contracts with our other agencies, potential notification provisions, our ongoing challenges with Geiger, as well as some of the work, the capital work that we're planning on doing in our downtown facility this year. I'll give you an update on that. So I know we have a strategic next week, but I think a couple of you are traveling. So I just want to get a sense of a good time to get that scheduled. It's fairly timely to have a broader conversation on that. So I'm kind of hearing next Monday is probably a no-go. Okay, and I think
Not the
Commissioner
17th.
French, you're
Yeah,
traveling
I'll be
too.
in DC next week for STA, and I'll be there from Tuesday. I don't think I come back until Friday, so I think I'm gone for 4 days. But I am going to be here Monday.
On the 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay. What about, would the 10th work if we shifted our strategic planning meeting from the 3rd to the 10th? That
Yeah.
generally work? Okay,
That won't work for me. But
okay,
if we do the 10th, I'm back in town, and then I will be gone Tuesday.
okay.
So
Then I'll work with Gina to have her give notice and move cancel the 3rd strategic planning meeting and then move it to the 10th. And then we'll queue this up. I thought it would be better for a strategic planning meeting because it's really a longer conversation with interactions from the board. Okay.
yes, I would agree that the 10th, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just clarifying, would we move the 3rd to the 10th or the 17th to the 10th?
What would be your preferences?
I would move the 3rd to the 10th. And then that still leaves the 17th as a normal one.
That way it gives, since 2 of you at least one of you will be out. Okay. All right, so we'll do the 3rd to the 10th. Thank you.
If there's nothing to fill the 17th, then we can.
Right. Okay. So, so I have my miscellaneous item that I brought up yesterday to just request at the request of Council President Betsy Wilkerson and I having a meeting to do a joint city council Spokane County Commissioner meeting at a future date, because it'll be interesting to try to figure out a date that will work for everybody. So, and then the agenda topics would be kind of, I need to talk to Betsy, and I think she and I would work through what those agenda topics would be and come back to the commissioners. And she'll probably want to talk to our council members as to what are the joint areas that we both have, and you know, as Commissioner French pointed out yesterday, you know, making sure that it's kind of, you know, what's some of the county issues we want to make sure we're addressing, and some of the city issues that we're addressing. So I guess want to get head nods before I start to try to work at negotiating a date that could work.
So how long are you anticipating the joint meeting lasting?
I'm hopeful that, because they have kind of some of their meetings on Mondays, you know, they have their Monday night, but don't they have some of their
So the
session meetings that maybe we could time it during one of those?
So Thursdays,
I
they
don't know.
typically have their briefings it's Thursday afternoons and stuff. So, and they typically last a couple hours. So it might not be a bad idea to maybe try and schedule around that that Thursday afternoon meeting kind of a deal, and block out 2 hours. And then the other question would be, where would you want to hold it at? We've
Yes, since you've done this in the past, what are your thoughts as to location?
well, the one meeting that we had with the city council, we tried to do it in their hearing room, and the dais was too small to handle all of us. So some sat below and some sat above, and then that created a class structure, and then there was hierarchy and all kinds of stuff to deal with. They do have their briefing center.
HR Learning Center is always big.
We could do HR Learning Center, and that way all of us could be around one table. And you know, I would not be surprised to have them. There'll probably be a discussion on location because turf matters. And so if that becomes an issue, a suggestion might be the Champions Room over at PFD. Since we both have an interest in the arena and the Champions Room, that would be neutral territory. And the conference room they have there is big enough to put all of us in there and stuff. So that might be a good compromise there.
It has all the technology we need.
Yeah.
Because Visit Spokane from time to time will host meetings there, and they've got all the same equipment we do in
Yeah.
our conference room. So you
Yeah.
can Zoom, you can do all that. So we'll be able to handle that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that might be, you know, if that comes up, that might be a good compromise
Okay.
facility for them. And then who's going to run the meeting will be the other question. Is that going to be Betsy? Is that going to be you? Or do they want the facilitator to facilitate the meeting? And so that will be up to the two of you to decide how you want to handle that. And the agendas, we already talked about that. So the agendas, who's going to provide refreshments? Because, well, they will have an expectation and stuff. So you might.
They will, or you will.
Did I? No, I got my own. I carry my own with
I
me.
ran out of cookies this morning, but I'll check with my mother-in-law. Maybe she can.
Evidently,
Yeah.
I hit Josh's funny bone here. I don't know what I said, but I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, goodness.
Do we need to call 911?
Good.
Anyway.
I will put refreshments down.
And that will, so agenda, location, facilitator, and water and whatever. Those are the main issues. that you have to negotiate through.
Well, the date is going to be the hardest thing,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So that's my concern, is trying to figure out the date.
And it
Well,
may just be
and-
something where some of us are just gonna have to say, you know what, I'm missing this meeting to go
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
this joint meeting. We might just have to do that.
Well, we're much more flexible than they are, because they're gonna say, well, we've got part-time jobs, we've got yada, yada, yada. We don't have that concern, so, that's why I was thinking, if we do it around a schedule that they already have, meaning the Thursday afternoon, that might be the easiest date, because Mondays, they're gonna be, staff is gonna be unwilling to give up Mondays, because that's the only time they have to brief the council before their council meetings and stuff. So, but Thursday is like an open study session. And Matt and Scott, you guys have both been there. Is what I'm saying consistent with your experience?
It's been some years, but that's what I recall. Their study sessions, and they call it our Thursday, I think, afternoons.
Yeah.
When I was there, their Mondays, at least the afternoons, were pretty busy with committee meetings. Mornings, not unless they had to double up on something. I don't think they had them in the mornings, but who knows, something might have changed since then. But I think you're generally on track from what I recall.
Okay.
And for the board's consideration, I have, Rebecca's been developing a kind of a consolidation of various working arrangements that we have in this with the city, agreements, outstanding items and whatnot. So that could be a good starting point. I could certainly, she's put something together in kind of a PowerPoint deck, so I could certainly send it over to you all. It's kind of timely because I've been wanting to talk with the board about some of these legacy things we have. We should be trying to get some movement on. So I can forward that around, and that could be a good starting point for picking off things for your agenda.
Well, and that will be, when we look at the agenda, it's how the nature of the items we put on the agenda is it the board's expectation that they would be low-hanging fruit that we just need clarity on? Or do we want to get into the difficult situations that might require some real negotiation? And is that the environment that you want to try and negotiate in? So you might want to consider that. And is it to share information, or is it to find agreement? And so if it's to share information, then it's a series of presentations. If it's to find an agreement, then you've got a debate. And then you'll probably want a facilitator. Just saying.
I would say this first one, since we haven't had one, would be good to,
Low hanging fruit.
yes, to kind of
Yeah.
look at, what we can inform each other on and agree on.
I would agree with that. Yeah, so
Otherwise, there will never be another one.
there'll
So,
never be another
and
one.
We don't want that to happen.
There might be a reason why we haven't done this for like 10 years. Yeah.
It all sounds good. And let's not forget the refreshments.
We'll make Josh bring them. Go to Costco.
Take care of it.
Okay, other miscellaneous items then.
Just a few quick ones.
Okay,
So if you look at the display cabinet on the first floor of Public Works, it has some of our third and fourth quarter news items from last year. So thanks to Sharissa and our team for putting that together just to highlight the county in the news. The next commissioner spotlight will be Commissioner Jordan, and we'll be scheduling his guest for the March episode. I did mention yesterday that we have a press release in development with Justin Johnson, anticipating board action next week on a partnership with a state agency on a facility. So when the agendas come out on Friday, I'll try and circulate a draft of that for you all.
I see Justin joined us.
There's Justin, great. And there was some conversation Justin and I still need to have about having the agency partner invited to your meeting, on Tuesday for maybe a ceremonial photo and in how we want to incorporate them into the news release or vice versa. If they're going to send a news release, something like a proclamation could be considered, but today would be the cutoff for head nods on a proclamation. So we can consider that if you'd like.
Why don't we, Justin, do you want to speak to any of that? Okay. Yeah, maybe not.
Nope.
Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry, it was just adding me, so my apologies. I believe Pat, the question was on the Stars and Commerce
Yes.
partnership.
And we're just discussing that we're preparing a press release. So I'm getting the board's approval, which is required to move forward with that, anticipating their action next week. And then mentioning that we may have a guest from the agency here as well for like a ceremonial photo after that board takes action on that item. Could be in the form of a proclamation if the board desired. I know Justin has suggested that as a possibility, but we usually reserve those for other kind of community type deals. I know there's a resolution that's going along with this, obviously for a board item. So the proclamation, in my mind, is a little duplicative of the press release, but we could certainly prepare one if the board desired.
I think I'm happy with the press release, and if there's, if they're able to be here next Tuesday, I will not be here. So yeah, you guys will be able to be here and handle that.
Good. And I'd contemplate giving the agency representative maybe a minute or something to speak after the item passes.
Yeah, Commissioner French won't be here either, so it'd just be the other three. I'm hoping to join for the 2:00. Are you as well?
We're still working out the schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so I will be on Zoom for
Good.
the 2:00. But
Okay, we'll move ahead on that then. It seems have approval to prepare the press release. The last item I was going to mention is we've been putting out information from Public Works about road restrictions. So thanks to all of you for sharing that if it affects your district. And then we have had seen some localized flooding. And so we've been sharing some information on that out as well. I think it's mostly South County, some West County out on Highway 2 by Fairchild. I know there was a significant flood in that dip. So mainly just for the county roads, but we'll continue that as long as those conditions persist. So that's all I had.
okay, just a second. I've got Kyle and I see Matt Zeracourse join us as well. So Kyle, you raised your hand a little bit ago.
Thank you, commissioners. I just wanted to ask you about a follow-up from one of the items Matt briefed you a few weeks back regarding a vacation on Beacon Avenue. And he had sent you some information from legal about the consideration of that and wanted to follow up and see if we were okay to proceed with our notice of public hearing on that item.
You're here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, this is the Beacon and Yale vacation up east of Hilliard. And when we were looking at the aerial, there was some concerns about possible code violations. And so as a follow-up, we got with legal and just posed the question whether those could be part of the considerations. And it was their legal opinion that we not give those much weight, is I believe the language that Jasper had used, our legal from prosecutor's attorney office. So up to the board, we would still recommend vacating the north-south right of way and keeping the other way around, vacating the east-west right of way and leaving Yale north-south for future connections. The code violations are, my understanding, ongoing, but they're separate and independent of this action. So we're just looking for direction.
Okay.
Our recommendation would be to vacate as discussed.
Okay. I'm looking to our legal to
That was an accurate representation of the legal advice. It can be part of the consideration, but it can't be anywhere near one of the deciding factors. So.
then, yeah, I'd say go ahead and move it forward to.
Okay. We'll get it scheduled for public hearing then.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Matt, as long as you're here, you know, because yes, just I'm getting obviously a lot of the flooding and stuff that has happened. I'm getting a lot of comments from citizens in my district. So trying to forward those on to you as I get them. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. We had, I believe it was 5 roads that we actually had to close due to the flooding. It was really for about a day. Most of those roads have been opened again. They were South County, primarily down in the Palouse, where you get those really flashy basins when we get the rain on snow and wind and warm weather, all kind of combining for a perfect storm, and washed out a few roads. Frankly, that is typical when we get that kind of event. You just really almost can't accommodate them sometimes. But this will lead to a larger conversation. We're hoping, Kyle and I are hoping to sit with the board members individually and talk about drainage, really in a nutshell, you know, a little foreshadowing. A lot of the reason we get these washouts, and we heard from Mr. Collier up on Foothills too, is a lack of ditching, you know, so looking for alternatives for revenue to help facilitate more drainage work on the rural roads in particular. But we'll try and get with you all individually and talk about that more.
My understanding, you had one road where the culvert actually ended up going down the stream and not being under the road and stuff. Is that was that a gravel road before and we just lost the base and stuff? And is that going to be something that can be easily repaired, or do we have to notify the residents around there to expect long delays?
You know, we'll be in conversation. My understanding is it's 2 smaller diameter culverts that have never worked very well. Clogging has been an issue historically. And once they clog, it tends to overtop the road. And it was a gravel road and washed out the road, and it'll be a while. You know, in a perfect world, we would go back to the permitting agencies and see if we could do a larger culvert. But then those tend to get really large when we go back to the permitting agencies. So instead of, say, 2-3 foot culverts, when we would like to go to a 5 or 6, it might be a 20-foot span arch culvert or something. So more conversation to be had. We can probably do it under an emergency permit with the services, but that'll be a conversation we'll have to have with them. So it'll be a while, would be the short answer.
And I'm sorry. And I'm not exactly sure where the location is of the washout, but I'm gonna bet that was probably in my district.
Yes, I believe that.
Oh, there you go.
Almost, I think 4 out of the 5 were southwest. So.
And is that something that, do we need to declare an emergency for that purpose, or can you?
You know, we're tracking the time in a project, whether it rises to the level of getting FEMA's attention and potentially having money go towards it. We always tend to, in these emergent events, create a bucket just so we have all the time and materials and effort together in one place. So if it does become a FEMA type event where we can ask for money back, we at least have that gathered up correctly.
Well, I'm just thinking of just being able to quickly fix the roads, you know, versus having to wait for all the permitting agencies. And
yeah, they do give us latitude in emergent events, is what I'd tell you. We have a relationship with them and they know when it's unusual.
Considered an emergent event.
Correct.
And we don't have to declare it that.
No, they understand, and they're pretty good to work with us historically on those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have another road I'll be sending you. I mean, just because it wasn't just, you know, full washouts, but then it's just washouts on the sides where it cut under the pavement, or some of the, you know, rural dirt roads that are just now have huge gullies in the middle.
Yeah, we do have a number of roads beyond the ones that were closed that were damaged by the event. I mean, I'm going to say a dozen or 2.
And then I think too, it's the potholes, because I'm seeing the potholes just suddenly come back in full force.
Yeah, it's when we get those really cold stretches of weather and it drives the frost in the ground. When it comes out, that's when we get the potholes, and that's gravel in paved roads, and it's likely to be quite the year, just the way they went so deep because of the extended cold weather, and then the way they came out fairly quickly because we're going to get really warm, and the quicker that frost comes out, we tend to see more damage from that.
Okay, thank you.
More to come.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, we've been calling a lot of constituents. So yeah.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And Kyle, you guys, I mean, because it's your department that really is taking the brunt of this. And I mean, it is what it is. And, Mother Nature, and we're just trying to, do the best that we can. And I know as I'm forwarding, the constituent calls, you guys are getting plenty yourselves. And I think we're getting some ourselves too, to forwarding on to you guys. I appreciate the demeanor and the kindness that your staff is showing the constituents as we're just taking those calls.
Yeah, and most of the conversations have been pretty constructive. People understand it was an unusual event. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else to come before the board this morning?
One.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, you can state the purpose of your executive session then.
Yeah, I've got an executive session, probably 10 minutes, pending or potential litigation. No decision to be made.
And who will be in?
Everybody at the DS and
Excluding Shelley.
excluding Shelley, and I think that's it.
Okay, very good.
Also, one pending and potential litigation under RCW 4230-110, section 1I. Same group plus Jeff. No action, 10 minutes.
Okay, so it is 10:41. We're going to go into executive session for approximately 20 minutes. No decisions will be made coming out of executive session, so we'll adjourn for the morning and see everybody back at 2:00. Thank you all very much.